1. And at this time, ask everyone in the audience and on the board and in attendance to stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the Independence Township Planning Commission meeting. For those attending tonight's meeting, both in person and remotely, we welcome you. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room, that's to my left, and also on the township website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended this evening by the Planning Commission. We've made every effort to ensure that the meeting adheres to the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Other individuals participating in the meeting include the Township Planner, Brian Ottman, the Township Engineer Consultant, Jason Longhurst, and the Township Planning Consultant, Richard Carlisle. And at this time, I ask the Planning Commission Secretary to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Boersma, absent. Mr. Galley.
Here.
Mr. Lochran.
Here.
Mr. Pytel.
Here.
Mr. Ritchie.
Here.
Chairman Salvador.
Here.
Ms. Tully here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We're missing one member. Next item is item D, review of the agenda. Does anyone want to forward the agenda as submitted, or does anyone want to recommend some revisions to said agenda?
I'll move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. We'll just do a signify through ayes or nays. All in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no one, agenda is approved as submitted. Next item is item E. This is for public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to comment on any items that are not on tonight's agenda? I welcome you to come to the podium now. Seeing no one in the audience, is there any, Mr. Ottman, is anyone attending remotely this evening? Okay, thank you. So when I said people are attending remotely, did I misspeak?
Somebody might join.
Someone could attend remotely.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Looks
thank
like
you,
Mr. Epic's on.
thank you. I'm talking about members of the public. Okay, good. Well, actually, technically, Mr. Epic is a member of the public. He is a township resident. Let the record show that there was no one either remote or in person who wished to speak on items not on tonight's agenda. Next item is item F, public hearings. We have one public hearing. We will get to opening the public hearing and give the public an opportunity to comment, but first we're gonna have staff and consultants present the items as well as have the petitioner add anything they'd like to add. After we've got that information out there for people to consider, we'll then open the public hearing. So that's item F1, PC file number 2022-005. The petitioner is Walden Village 2 LLC. The property is located on the north side of Walden Road, west of Sashaba Road, parcel number 0822351061. The zoning is PUD, planned unit development, and the petitioner is requesting a minor PUD amendment, including final site plan approval for phase 4 of the development, consisting of 78 detached condominiums. Mr. Carlisle, would you have a report? Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you did correctly identify the two items that the commission needs to consider tonight. The minor amendment is something that is within the purview of the Planning Commission, and the reason it's a minor amendment is because it's simply a modification of phasing, which is, it's specifically pointed out in the ordinance that is a minor amendment. The other issue is recommendation of final site plan approval to the Township Board. In a PUD, in this case, the Planning Commission is a recommending body to the Township Board. The plan will go on to the Township Board. So essentially what is happening here is the developer, Mr. Silverman, and his partners, Pulte, want to proceed with phase 4 of this project, which was the single-family residential portion of the project, what were termed to be the villas. And I can say that the layout is identical to what you reviewed and approved as part of the PUD. The number of units is the same. All of the dimensional requirements are correct and meet what was approved as far as the approved PUD, a PUD that was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission and by the Township Board. So that, in essence, that is, you know, what you're seeing before you tonight is just a final site plan of what you reviewed and approved before. There was a couple of minor things in our report that need to be corrected. One of the items that we did point out is that we had previously pointed out that in proximity to units 36 and 41, which are the ones closest to the expressway, that existing vegetation buffer there is all, it's deciduous trees. And so we are recommending that they do supplement that with some evergreen trees, evergreen plantings in that particular vicinity, which is consistent with a previous recommendation that we made. I wanted to also clarify that the floor plans that you did receive show that they're essentially two-bedroom units with the potential for a third bedroom in second floor of one of the models. It's also possible that in one of the other model that what looks to be like a study or a den area is also convertible. So speaking with Mr. Score about this, they are willing to condition that it will all be no more than 3 bedrooms. In most cases, it'll probably be 2 bedrooms, but in some cases, people may wish to have that third bedroom, particularly in the story, when on the units that have the upper floor. So they're willing to agree with that. One of the things I do want to point out that because of all of our great experience that we've had in Independence Township with decks, they are going to be including decks within the prescribed building area for each unit. And I'm correct about that? Yeah. Yeah, they will be providing decks so that we won't be dealing with that issue. They will be provided. So that is, essentially, you do have the elevations. These are very similar, if not identical, to some of the units that have been built out in Pine Vista. I think there's all of the connectivity has been provided with the walkways and to the park, as well as throughout the development. So this particular phase will be connected to all other phases with a walkway system, and the site amenities, as were previously indicated, are included in this project also in terms of one of the areas that I think the commission asked for was some extensive landscaping in the vicinity, or it was in the vicinity of units 72 through 78, where you have the backs of those units back up to the roadway. And what they've done is put a very nice fence and landscape detail backing up to those units. That will also be where their entrance detail is coming into this development. So I think Mr. Epic's done a nice job with that. So other than that, I have no other comments, and our recommendation is to approve the minor amendment for the phasing and the change in phasing, and to approve the recommend approval of the PUD, subject to addressing the minor conditions that I have pointed out in my review.
So, Mr. Carlisle, it would be a two-step process then, if
You
we're
will need to make
proceeding.
2 separate motions, that's correct.
First the minor amendment, and then
Correct.
secondly, the final, if that's the
Yeah.
direction we go in.
Yep.
Any questions for Mr. Carlisle?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Basically, I object to you saying that the PUD is approved. When we approved the PUD, I specifically mentioned that in phase 4, that I thought the density was too high, but we weren't approving that night. It was basically conceptual for 3 and 4, and we approved the PUD with final site plan for phase 1 and 2.
You did approve it. Mr. Ritchie.
I know we approved the PUD, but.
But then,
but-
that fixed the density and all the requirements, all in the permit conditions.
All right,
Yeah,
And,
you did.
but I mean, phase 3 and 4, we're still capable of being changed as far as the layout?
No,
No?
no.
All right. Then I object to phase 4 being, phase 4 being put ahead of phase 3, because to me, what we do with phase 3 highly affects what happens in phase 4. And I think it's a major change, not a minor change.
I guess I don't understand how, because you approved a layout for phase 3 also.
No?
So that parking isn't gonna expand, because there's no place to go.
Well, I guess that's my objection, so.
Okay. Well, I can read to you the MAF that was given to the township board, that you did approve, that outlined specifically what you were approving, as well as the permit conditions.
All right, well, we didn't, when we talked about the final site plan, it was the final site plan for phase 1 and 2, that basically 3 and 4 still weren't solidified at that time, because there was still objection. I remember specifically saying it was too dense in phase 4, so.
But you voted for approval.
And the shame
So
on me.
I don't know really what to say to you, because the permit conditions were very specific, that it said 78 units. The plan was the plan hasn't changed to
Right.
78 units.
Well, I still object that phase 3 is being put after phase 4, because I think phase 3 is
Well,
very
that's
strategic
certainly
to
your
that,
that's
so.
certainly your prerogative, of
So.
course. I mean, and it's your prerogative to vote against the whole thing if you choose, but I just say that this was what was established by the board.
Anyone else? Any questions for
To
Mr.
your
Law?
left there,
What's that?
to your left.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, I have kind of an associated question. I think I read somewhere that the parking is 2 cars in the garage and 2 cars in the driveway, and there's no other parking.
They'll be parking on one side of the street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't see that.
I thought I put that in my review.
So I guess my question for the developer is this, if you have other
Yeah, it was in my review.
similar projects, you don't get a lot of complaints about lack of parking?
Well, it depends on the project.
Please introduce yourself, Mr. Score.
Joe Score with Pulte Homes of Michigan. Typically, we don't get the complaints, but in a, let's say, for example, a townhome community where, you have a lot of density, sometimes you can have a little bit of a parking issue, especially when you have events or parties or graduation, things like that.
Yeah, right. So hopefully there's enough street parking, is that the plan?
Well, these are probably 1 and 2 person households. So between 2 in the
Yeah.
garage, 2 in the street, 1 side of the street parking, it should be
Should be
sufficient.
enough,
Yeah.
This is the MAF.
okay. And then there's the marketplace parking, right? So you could kind of slide in there.
Well, I wouldn't comment on the commercial parking.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Do you have a question for Mr.
Yeah,
Carlisle?
just a quick comment, kind of along the lines of what Mr. Ritchie was saying. I believe didn't we have a breakout meeting on this? Was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? I can't remember. A small group meeting? Yeah, and I just left that meeting with notes, and, I mean, when you say to him, it was approved and nothing could be changed, I just, just rattling them off, I don't expect answers of them all right now, but I had, question number, unit number 21, why is unit number 21 there? I think the question of number 50 and 51, there was an access point between there and it was close. Something about unit 60, also intensive screening behind units 1 through 13. So I guess in my mind, it wasn't a final layout, and if it was, why were all those questions? And I didn't write down next to it who objected to those certain units, but
No, don't misunderstand me. This is, this is a final site plan. What Mr. Ritchie was objecting to was a specific number of units that the board approved.
okay.
That's all I said, and there were some changes made as a result of that meeting. For example, units 60 and 59, with greater separation there, because if you remember, I didn't like the location of unit 60 because it was right at the end of that, the termination of that road. They changed that.
Yeah,
you-
and I mean, some of the other spots for snow loading and stuff like that, there's just not a lot of room in here, so. Yeah, and when you said final to him, I just misunderstood that as, this is what it is, take it or leave it kind of thing.
What I'm indicating is that this is essentially the layout and the number of units the township board approved when the final PUD was approved. The actual dimensions, in terms of setbacks, distance between units, all of that was approved by the board. So what I'm saying is that this plan complies with the permit conditions that were approved by the board. Now, does that mean there can't be some changes? Of course there can be. It's a final site plan. It's a site plan.
Mhm.
And some of those changes were made as a result of that meeting.
Mhm. Yeah, and I see a few that weren't, so.
And that's fair game to bring up, because that's what you're here for as a commissioner,
Understood.
so. But my point was, to say it's too dense, that ship has sailed, frankly. The board approved it.
I thought we were proving that it's like the maximum density. It doesn't mean that, if you get a 100-foot house,
I'll give
not a
you the
50-foot lot.
materials, I promise.
I understand, I'm not trying to argue the point of law, I guess, I'm just saying, to me, it was, I left that meeting, thinking that, the arrangement of how this is laid out still could be changed, so. But we did set the maximum density at that time, so.
Go ahead.
So Dick, can you just reiterate what it is we're approving here?
You would be asked, you're asked to approve a minor amendment to change the sequence of phasing.
And that's it, that's all we're approving?
Well, you are, and in Mr. Ritchie's case, he's gonna get another bite at the apple, because all you're doing here is recommending, making a recommendation to the township board on the final site plan. The final site plan does go back, on a PUD, goes before the plant, goes before the township board.
We're voting to recommend.
Because normally it would have, but if you, because phases 3 and 4 were not accompanied by final site plans, which is frequently what happens with large PUDs and has happened many times in this township. The final approval still has to go back to the township board for the final site plans for phases 3 and 4.
But we can't change anything.
I didn't.
I'm
I don't understand
confused.
I don't know why that's not understandable.
Well, I think
Yes,
you-
you can change things, but, but there were conditions, permit conditions that were established by the township board that the developer agreed to. So I think you can make changes in layout if there's some objections to things in layout. But if you're gonna, what I'm saying is that I think if you make changes to what the permit conditions establish, I think there's an issue with that. So if you think it's gonna be 68 units, I can tell you that probably will not happen. But it's up to you. You're making the recommendation, I've given you my report, and you're the commissioner. You're the ones that make the recommendation to the township board.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I think I was just not understanding exactly what we were doing. That's my problem. I mean,
Okay.
it's not your problem, but that's.
No, that is my problem, because that's what I'm supposed to be here to make things clear, and I'm concerned that it was not clear to the township board.
The PUD process is a confusing process. It is.
Well, this particular sequencing who was gonna be involved in the development has also changed several times as well. I mean, going back to the first community meeting, we were gonna have a gathering space with a gazebo. I mean, that's not there anywhere. It was supposed to be part of the commercial, but now the commercial's last. So everything else goes in, and then we're stuck with the commercial last, which may or may not ever happen. So it's just, the concern for the citizens of the township that thought they were, getting a gathering space that's, no longer anywhere on any of these plans was kind of where I was gonna go next before Judy, stepped in, but, we can talk about it during the rest of the open meeting.
Well, can I just respond to that? I mean, here is the plan that you all saw and approved. If anybody's confused about what, with your recommendation to the township board, here it is. So I mean, pass it down so everybody sees it. The reason that we have done things this way is so that both you and the developer can rely upon what is agreed upon. And that is why we go to extraordinary lengths to establish a set of permit conditions that lay out what the rules of the game are. So the only thing that's being asked to be changed, which is your prerogative to make the recommendation, the only thing that's being asked to be changed is the sequence and phasing.
Mr. Lockman?
So I actually looked at this earlier today, the approved plan. And I had a couple comments. Overall, from a site layout, Dick, I agree with you. I mean, I looked at this today and realized this is basically what we approved before. Is there discretion, is there leeway? Of course. But I thought that they pretty much, fell in line with what was approved. And I didn't have any problem with it. I actually forgot that we had, units all the way up to the freeway and up in that corner. When I saw this plan, my sense was, well, this is, to your point, this is what the developer relies on. And, I think that's something that's important. I have more of a concern, well, actually, before I get to that, one thing I did notice was there was a path basically along the eastern and northern perimeter on the approved plan. And that wasn't anything you had in your staff report. I consider that a change that should have been referenced in this. Having said that, I'm not gonna die on that sword, but I think it's something that we should discuss as a commission, that is a change. Now, you could argue that nobody's gonna use that, and there's still a path to go through the project to basically cut through, walking along Walden to get up to Walters. I could buy that. I could also buy that, that path might be taking out some existing trees that might be important to keep there. I could buy that, although we could do, we could do wood chips or something that's, less intrusive. I'd rather see that path there, but again, it might be no man's land, so I'm not gonna die on that sword. That is a difference, though, that was not referenced, so I wanted to point that out to the rest of the commission.
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond?
Yes.
That actually change did occur at the township board when the park became private.
That was removed?
Correct. And,
Okay.
Again, it was in that report from me to the board. And I think at that point, the board didn't feel the necessity to have what that was intended to be was a public pathway through a public park.
Is it still possible, and I mean, I have communities like this where the public would have, let's say, deeded access through the project? Because I do think people would use that to get through to Walters. I don't know who's necessarily gonna be walking there, but, it's a lot better than walking along Walden.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's something that I think maybe we can discuss, if the developer would be willing to have, public access through there, if that's something that we'd like to see as a commission. My main concern, though, and I'll just bring it up here, is the phasing. I think that's more of a major change. And the only reason I say this, I still think the plan itself, it's changed a lot. We lost, I think, a lot of things we liked about this at the beginning. We had a pretty, we had, I think, some pretty exciting things at the beginning, and it kind of whittled away as it's gone. I think a lot of that is due to COVID. This just kind of came in at that time, and I think a lot of things had changed. Obviously, the movie theater was, one thing I can think of that sticks in my head. But this is the plan we approved, so I'm kind of falling on the line of this is the plan we need to go with. My main concern is the phasing, and why I say that is because I'm concerned that we're not gonna get a market at some place. This is gonna change to something else. And frankly, the only leverage we had, in my mind, was not having this portion of it go forward before the market. Maybe there's another way we can do it. Maybe there's something we can do with bonding. Maybe we can have them phase this portion, so now we have a smaller phase. I don't wanna necessarily punish Pulte for that. And honestly, I think that this product is good for this location, and it creates that village, which, that's the thing I like about this project. You've got different, different types of homes in here, which is important. I'm just really concerned that we're just gonna have a residential project and it's gonna sit there for decades, and years, and that's a market thing. So maybe there's nothing we can do about it, but that was how we were holding our feet to the fire, was the market goes in before the residential. So I'm willing to kind of think of ways we can still achieve that, but to me, that's my main concern with this request, not the density. Personally, Ron, I think the density's set. That's how I feel about it. I think there are some changes we can make. Brian, brought up a couple things that I think I noticed as well, some more buffering, 1 through 13, a couple other things that, kind of minor tweaks. And then, what's the timing for the park too? That's another thing. But I'm more concerned about how do we make sure we get some of these things we wanted out of this, and still have that leverage. So I'm willing to listen to what you guys say about that.
Any other questions? Something's gotta go first. Something's gotta go first. Something's gotta go first. There's gonna be a phase 1, there's gonna be a phase 2, there's gonna be a phase 3, and there's gonna be a phase 4. 5 or 10 years ago, the first phase on this application would have been the market. That's just the way it was. The market's changed, the world has changed, and now the market is not gonna be phase 1, it's gonna be pushed back. We have a developer who's ready to put a shovel in the ground, and something's gotta go first. 5 years ago it would have been the market, now it's not. I want a market as badly as everyone, believe me. My wife nags me every couple months, where are we at? I want it here just as much as everyone else. But I believe we have a need for this housing type. I have no issue with the density. We approve this density. If, I would support minor tweaks that Mr. Galley mentioned, but I have no issue with the density, and I have really no issue with the phasing. I do agree with you, like, I'm concerned about the market. But I don't think it benefits us to hold back this phase. And I agree with you, but I don't think holding back phase 4 is the answer. There's gotta be something else. Because I think this is a pretty good development, a really good development. I really like it. And I think these units are at the right place. So, any other questions? Mr. Longhurst, do you have any engineering comments?
The bulk of our letter, again, is things that we want to see on the final construction plans. We were recommending a couple of tweaks related to the mail kiosks and their location. The southern one, we were recommending that it be relocated to the east so that the residents wouldn't have to access the kiosk from the neighboring development. And then the northern kiosk, we wanted to extend the sidewalk to that for pedestrian access there. Details on the stub roads from the development from phase 1. There's some temporary cul-de-sacs that are put in there. We wanted to make sure that the phasing incorporated revising those. And then all of the stormwater management comments from previous phases are kind of reiterated in this letter. They're in the process of designing a method to accommodate the stormwater that's coming under I-75 onto the property and routing that through. So we'll be looking to finalize that as part of the construction drawings. And then also we're noting here that the applicant needs to work with
Mr. Altman, do you know if the developer has a planned presentation this evening?
Yes, he does. Mr. Epping does.
Mr. Epping does, okay. If, Mr. Epping, you've heard the discussion, if you could perhaps incorporate a response to some of our thoughts in your presentation, or maybe at the end of your presentation, I think that would go a long way. I feel like Mr. Epping's looking over my shoulder, so I'm very uncomfortable right now.
Sure if he's in the
I
bathroom
can't,
or.
you're on mute, you're on mute, you're on mute, I can't hear you. Nope.
Can't hear you, Jim.
Just a quick comment for Mr. Longhurst while he's working on that. On my note card from that breakout meeting too, I have like 3 exclamation points next to our DPW director that he said, I need a redundant water tap. So that's what you mentioned last,
Correct.
securing the easements and stuff. I mean, he was saying that's pretty much a mandatory.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Nope.
Can you unmute him, Brian, or does he have to do
No,
it himself?
he's unmuted. It's the cable.
I think the last time this happened, you guys turned up the volume on the TV and it came alive.
Black, small black one right there.
This little guy?
That one, yeah.
Well, he would come over the speakers, wouldn't he?
There we go.
Turn it up. It's on 0. There you go. Keep speaking, Jim.
No, it's not that. Because he comes over the overheads. Everybody does.
Is there a dial?
Technical difficulties. Let's take a couple moments and fix this.
Neither audio are functioning. Neither audio settings are functioning for cable right now.
Can he call into one of our phones?
He's
and
gonna-
just hold
he's
that
doing it
up
right
to
now.
the Microphone?
Call me, because he's texting me.
So at least we can hear him and he can hear us, so.
He would just have those,
Do we have any lip readers in the audience?
He can hear us.
Oh. Somebody reboot? Let's kick everybody off. That's very good.
Thanks for coming out, everybody.
that looks technical.
Jeez. That's above my pay grade. How far away does he live?
Texas.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
His daughter's graduating.
No problem.
You know, Mr. Savana, given some of the comments here, I think that the planning commission's going to need to make the decision there might be a third
Figure it out.
motion that needs to be considered, and that is whether this is a minor or major change.
Yeah, let me resend it to you.
Because if the board decides that it's not a minor change, then we have a whole different procedure for that.
Meaning it goes to the board.
No, it actually goes, it's here. It does, but it starts here with a public hearing. And that, because, again, my interpretation, not my reading of the ordinance, this is, phasing is a minor change, but, the board is, you as a commission are free to make your own interpretations of the ordinance.
But is it specific in the
Yeah.
PUD?
It does say.
You just put him on speaker off your phone and just.
He's unmuted.
Hmm. Are we gonna try to do a phone-to-phone?
Brian?
There we go.
Yep, can hear you.
Yeah, you guys can't hear me through my computer or my phone, so I think it must be the TV in there.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, Mr. Sabana, can you hear me all right? Thank you for, I apologize for the technical issues here. I did hear the conversation, and I will respond to it as much as we can. As has been discussed, and I appreciate Mr. Carlisle report. This is phase 4, technically, of our 5-phase PUD that was reviewed and obviously discussed at great length. We have had whether we call them A, B, C, or red, green, black. We did call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but if it had a consistent note on our drawings that saying they could be developed concurrently, as is phase 1 and phase 2 being developed concurrently, or they could be developed, at least from our point of view, in any order that might be. So it was always our intent that even though 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are sequential numbers, that they weren't necessarily sequential phasing, and that based on market conditions, based on infrastructure needs and so forth, that they could be developed out of sequence, or at least out of numerical sequence. So we appreciate the opportunity to amend it from a bookkeeping point of view, and frankly, that's kind of how we thought this was, is more of a housekeeping numbering issue than any type of change in development plans. As it relates to commercial, and I apologize, Buzz hasn't been able to attend today. He's not feeling well today, but I'm glad that Steve and Joe are in the audience there and can continue to answer questions. As it relates to commercial, Buzz is allowed me to share that the market has, that market parcel, there is a signed purchase agreement from a grocer. We're not at liberty to discuss names or anything. It's still under the due diligence period. We expect that to happen quickly. We know that they're out there doing soil samples right now. We're in discussion with architecture, with final site plan details, very, very consistent with what's been presented. So
we expect that, there's been such great success with phase 1 and phase 2. We think that, we know that detached condos will be very successful. You guys are getting the feedback now.
Hey, Mr. Epping,
the market
we can hear you through the computer now.
Have letters of
You can't hear me.
intent for the remaining commercials. So we see this as happening very, very quickly, and we should be back into you with some of the commercial phases before the end of this year. As it relates to phase 1, 2, and 4, as they're numbered, As you know, phases 1 and 2, the townhomes and single family are under construction now. Those can continue to move swiftly. With phase 4, as we've called it, the detached condos, they're very, very consistent with, as Mr. Carlisle and the commission has pointed out, was anticipated, was presented, and was approved. We have made changes. I don't know that I would call them significant, but they certainly are important changes from that preliminary stage to the final stage. And we have made additional changes since that pre-application meeting about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Those changes really result in necessary changes from an engineering point of view. In other words, we have modified the location of the buildings to address easements for storm or for other utility easements that Steve and his team have gone ahead and started to or completely solidified and put those in their final locations. As the park was privatized as a result of the board's motion at the preliminary stage, that is when we eliminated, Mr. Loughran pointed out, and this is the old plan, I'll go to the new plan, I guess. We did eliminate, I'll stay here because it's easiest to see, but the old plan did have this sidewalk when this park was privatized. This was eliminated, really mostly because the public park anticipated the township and the developer working together to gain access easements all the way to Fleming's Lake. If you remember correctly, our property doesn't touch Fleming's Lake, and as soon as this was privatized, it became nearly impossible to foresee a way to get a public access from one private property to another. And so what we did is we took advantage of that space, we increased the buffer on the back of these homes, and we strengthened the internal circulation in terms of safety paths and sidewalks that allow the public to come from the high school through the single family and then really traverse the entire neighborhood within the internal sidewalks. So any families that are in the commercial area or coming down Walden absolutely will be able to use the sidewalks, come through the neighborhood, stay on the sidewalks, and cross safely over to the high school or that area, and obviously vice versa for people coming from the west and moving east. What we have eliminated, as Mr. Loughran correctly points out, is that safety path that was envisioned to connect through that public easement or a future easement through the private properties and getting down to Fleming's Lake. Other changes that have happened were originally this was envisioned to be a public access to what would have been a public park. As soon as that became a private park, we don't foresee vehicle access getting into here. Mr. Carlisle pointed out at our pre-application meeting that it didn't make sense, and we agreed to have a home right here. So this really becomes a great landscape opportunity to terminate the Walden Center North Drive here. The rest of the phase 2 development improvements really are again consistent with the approved preliminary plan. They remain single-family detached condos. We've expanded the buffers, as I pointed out, along 75. We've enhanced the landscape, both adjacent to our single-family phase 1, as well as to the neighbor single-family. We agree with Mr. Carlisle in terms of enhancing additional evergreen landscaping up at this eastern area. What Joe Score pointed out there is Pulte has made big steps as it relates to the decks and the patios and the livability of the community, as well as the enforcement of the building department. And so not only in this phase, but in the single family phase and in the townhome phases, all 3 of these phases, decks are or will be included from Pulte with the construction of the home. So there won't be any single family homeowners, there won't be any townhome homeowners or any park villa homeowners that come in for deck permits. They'll all be built as the base accommodations, base options included within the sale of all 3 of these homes. What we're showing here are building envelopes, and the building envelopes are 41 foot by 78 foot. That accommodates the home, the deck, and an optional sunroom. So from a spacing point of view, really these envelopes that you're seeing here are the maximum building envelope that would ever be built here. If they don't have the sunrooms, obviously that would come out of the envelope that we're showing here. The setbacks remain the same in many cases, like along 75, along some parts of the townhomes and some parts of the single family, we've increased the setbacks. We have 3 different building types ranging in size from 1,780 square feet up to about 1,800 square feet, 1,850. If they take the sunroom option and an optional upstairs on one of the units, they could get up to about 2,000 square feet. As Mr. Carlisle points out, we're eliminating all the homes to 3 bedrooms maximum, and we're providing about 28 different elevations. So 3 different floor types with 28 elevations. Literally, you just won't see too many of the same homes within this neighborhood. There's going to be a tremendous variety and very, very good architecture, as we're seeing at the Park Vistas. So with that, Mr. Savinet, we're here to answer any questions. We hear the Planning Commission. Although the changes, as I say, sound subtle, they are important in terms of us listening to what the Planning Commission has said, what the board has said, and what the township consultants have said at the various pre-application and the review letters. We know that the engineering works. We've accommodating to the planning issues. We feel really proud about the connections that we're putting here and the excitement that we've had in phase 1 and phase 2. We're certainly proud, speaking from Buzz's point of view, certainly proud and excited that Pulte is taking over phase 3. It's obviously great synergy to have Pulte steering the ship for phases 1 and 2 and now phase 4, I guess. And we know that from a cross-marketing point of view, that this just strengthens it even more. So we're excited about the commercial that'll be coming to you very soon. We have every intent to develop that, and should the unthinkable happen with the economy, that might create a delay across our community on a lot of things, but we certainly don't foresee that with this commercial, and we've got a lot of forward momentum with the commercial right now. Mr. Savinet, I'll go back to the chair now and allow you guys to ask additional questions. Certainly, we're anxious to hear from the public, and we're anxious to move forward with this phase and with the minor amendment just to the numbering of the plans.
Do any of the planning commissioners have any questions for Mr. Epping before I open up the public hearing?
You have one, and maybe Joe can answer this instead, but when I look at the plan, there's, obviously you've got the condominium area for each of these units. Some of them have a little notch in the front. I'm guessing you're limiting to the product, because I'm looking at the floor plans, all but one of them basically take that entire rectangle. So are these gonna be just limited to that one plan? It looks like there's about 10 of them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's, because of some of the homes that are on the cul-de-sac type situation or on a curve situation, there's a few that just won't accommodate that. So there's about 10 that one of the building types won't fit on that lot. The rest of them are universal.
Yeah, there's one area where there's like 5 in a row. So that'd be the same plan for those 5. Am I reading that right?
Two different home types. One of the 3 would not fit on there.
Okay. That's better.
Is that it for questions, Mr. Walker?
That's all I have.
Anyone else before I open up? We can come back. Assuming technology holds up, it's not going anywhere. So the next item on the agenda is a public hearing. A public hearing is an opportunity for residents to share their comments on a specific project with the Planning Commission. Everyone in attendance who wishes to speak will be provided with an opportunity to speak. We appreciate everyone attending the meeting in person and remotely tonight to share their thoughts with the Planning Commission. Your comments are important. Before I open up the public hearing, it's important to set up some ground rules so that it can be an effective and efficient public hearing. Please begin your comments by clearly stating your name and address for the public record. Please keep your comments brief. All comments should relate to the specific item that is being considered. I'm not going to put a timer on anybody. Take as much time as you want, but please stay on track. This is an opportunity for residents to provide comment. It's not a discussion. It's not a debate. So we'll first start with any residents that are attending the meeting at the Township Hall. Is there anyone in attendance here in person who wishes to comment on this item? Please go to the podium, introduce yourself.
Technically open it.
And I'm opening the public hearing. I love doing that.
7:22.
Patrick Kittle, 4647 Oakhurst Ridge Road, Clarkston. So, good evening, Mr. Chairman and esteemed members of the Planning Commission. And thank you for allowing me to address the PC this evening. I got to tell you, it's a little weird being on this side of the dais, so please bear with me if I'm stumbling and bumbling along a little bit. But before I begin, let me address a question that I've been asked about 4 or 5 times this evening. You know, first, I love retirement. And just to be perfectly clear, I really love retirement. and second, no, I'm not coming back for a comeback, tour. So 9 years was enough. But seriously, after all these years, it's exciting to see the Weldon Village project finally taking shape. New homes, new townhouses, and new townhouses and new condos. From a lifestyle and demographic perspective, it appears a full palette of housing options will soon be available for this great community. Mr. Silverman, his team, the Planning Commission are all to be commended, I think, for a great job. This is going to be, I think, one bang-up project. But one thing I remember vividly when these discussions and planning sessions were first started was that a Nino Savaggio International Fruit Market was going to be the anchor for the store. I mean, that was said time and time again, and as you know, I know there was hiccups, and I know there wasn't nothing for sure yet, but that was a key thing for me. I knew I've been out of the loop since my retirement, but I am now hearing rumors that a specialty market created by another big box store is now being seriously considered as a Nino replacement. Based on what Jim says, it sounds like there's a PA that's signed. I have no idea on what or why negotiations broke down between Mr. Silverman and the Savaggio organization. I do remember when I was still a township employee that negotiations were delayed because the key Savaggio employee who was to head this project needed time off because his wife was deathly ill. We all have families, I'm sure you can understand that, and this delay probably got things off to a rough start. And I also understand that COVID, labor shortages, and supply chain issues turned the whole world upside down, which I'm sure didn't help with the timely due diligence needed in this multi-million-dollar undertaking. But I've also heard rumors that the Savaggio group threw in the towel and withdrew from the project, allowing Mr. Silverman to look for another anchor store. In the audience tonight is Mr. Mike McInerney, a township resident, and more importantly, the attorney for the Savaggio family responsible for all land acquisitions. Mr. McInerney will attest the Savaggio family is indeed 100% on board with this project, will attest the family has never thrown in a towel on this project, and will attest to how the Savaggio organization would love to be able to serve the residents of our great community. While I can't speak for the esteemed members of the Township Board of Trustees, I do know my approvals for this development, and maybe even some of yours, were driven in large part by being told that we would have a Nino's, that there was a really, really good chance that we'd have a Nino's as a retail component for Weldon Village. And from the agenda tonight, it looks like the PC has decided if the final site plans approval, along with phasing, are going to happen. While not being a planning expert, as Mr. Carlisle has repeatedly reminded me over the past 9 years, and not an attorney, as Mr. Jopik and Mr. Kelly repeatedly told me, if you just approve the condo, if you approve just the condo phase tonight, I believe the township will lose any leverage they may have to ensure the township receives not just a decent market alternative, but what I believe would be the best choice, a Nino Savaggio International Market. I've personally shopped both markets, and I can tell you there is absolutely no comparison. The Nino's experience blows the competition away hands down. I've never tried to sway the PC in my 9 years as supervisor on any development, but because I feel so strongly about the benefits a Nino's market will bring to our community, I'm requesting that any approval for the condos be tabled for 90 days while the developer does what he said he was going to do when the Walden Village project was first presented to us and negotiate a deal with Nino's. I understand money talks and BS walks. I'm sure this other buyer has offered up some large dinero for that acreage parcel over there, for those stores. But 90 days is not gonna kill this project and hurt it one way or another. And again, while I understand tonight's agenda is about condos, I am asking for the PC's indulgence and allow Mr. McInerney a couple of minutes to clear up any misunderstandings and clarify the Savaggio family's commitment to this project and to our community. Thank you for your attention and consideration in this matter. I am now going to go back to retired life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kittle. Anyone else?
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here. I appreciate the time. My name is Michael McInerney. I live at 6832 Intermezzo Drive in the Pine Knob Enclaves. And I am representing the Nino Salvaggio's stores, the owners, the controlling shareholders. It is, was the point person in the dialogues with the developer going back well into 2020. In December of 2020, I told him that we needed to pause because of the health issue in the family of one of the key management people who would be involved in this project, which, as Pat alluded to, on April 29th, the Salvaggios and I, April 29th, 2021, the Salvaggios and I met with Buzz, told him that we were ready to go. We had a workaround strategy for that problem, and we were ready to get going. And we shook hands and said, "Okay, we're moving forward." We told him the next step from our standpoint was to understand the cost of the project, from soup to nuts, the dirt, the infrastructure, the hard construction costs, soft construction costs. I had dialogue with the developer for on and off for the next roughly 6 months. Made a little progress, not a heck of a lot of progress. We were frustrated. We asked for a face-to-face meeting. Mr. Silverman indicated he would accommodate that as soon as his daughter's wedding was behind him. That was late December, and then he stopped talking to us. And I have information from Mr. Silverman that he had an opportunity to make a deal with another grocer at a substantially higher price for the dirt, and that's the last discussion that I had with him, and that was early part of this year, January, February of this year. We were very disappointed in that. We're very interested in putting a Nino's in this location, in this community. Despite the competition with a couple of Kroger's and Neiman's and the others, the smaller markets around, we think that it'll be a very, very successful store. We operate 4 stores in Clinton Township, Troy, St. Clair Shores, and the newest one is in Bloomfield Hills. They're all very successful, all profitable. It took just over 1 year for the Bloomfield store to become profitable after it was open. It's been a big success, and we'd really like to put a store in this community. And for me personally, selfishly, I'd really like to see a Nino's right down the street from my house. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance in person who wishes to comment on this item? No. You already had a chance. Anyone attending the meeting remotely who wishes to comment? No one? I said I wasn't going to put a timer on it. Mr. Kittle, you spoke once. I'm going to give you 3 minutes because you're a nice guy. Make it good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. I do agree with the point that Ron made about phasing. If you have a successful retail outlet there, but you're jammed in and constrained by space because of Phase 4 condos, I think you're gonna hurt yourself as far as what the potential is there, so, and you might wanna consider that. And that's really about it. I think the phasing is a big opportunity here for you guys to consider as well, but, the 90-day hiatus to give the Savaggio family a group to negotiate and put together a package, I know that's what sold me, and I'm hoping you'll give it consideration.
Thank you. Bring it back to the board for deliberation. I'm going to first close the public hearing, noting that everyone who's in attendance who wishes to speak has spoken, and there was no one online who wished to speak, and gives me an opportunity to use my gavel again, so I'm going to close the public hearing.
7:31.
7:31. Any comments? Questions? Go ahead.
I have a comment. I'm new on the board. I've watched my Michigan State units up until the PUD development. And I want to know what our options, what's my option? Like, what's going on here? If they talk to Mr. Silverman and the Ninos was gonna go in, but then he quit talking to them, what do we think is happening here? It seems like there was a handshake agreement and then it went away since last December.
I guess, two parties were unable to come up with an agreement, and another party came in. And in my opinion, planning commissioners don't get involved in market transactions. I don't know if I've answered your question or not, that's only my opinion.
What do we do?
Well, we have before us, as Mr. Carlisle indicated, we have a two-step, possibly a three-step process before us. As Mr. Lochran indicated earlier, in his opinion, he feels that it's not a minor amendment, it's potentially a major amendment. So step one will be the planning commission making a determination if it's a minor or major amendment. And then once we determine it, if we do determine it's a minor amendment, we would consider the minor amendment proposed. And if that's approved, we would consider the final site plan, making a recommendation on the final site plan and moving it on to the township board. How did I do, Mr. Carlisle? Please.
You know, since we've had this discussion before regarding what constitutes a major and minor amendment, I do think it's important that the board or the commission is aware of exactly what the language is in the ordinance, and then you can make a decision, based on what you hear. And so, see, Brian, I can pull things up, and you should be. I'd bring my iPad out if it wasn't running out of power right now. And essentially, the following changes shall be considered major for which amendment is required. And that means, essentially, then what we do is we require a public hearing, and essentially it's an amendment of the plan. So a change in the concept of the development, a change in use or character of the development, a change in the type of dwelling unit as identified on the approved area plan, increase in the number of dwelling units, increase in non-residential floor area of over 5%, rearrangement of lots, blocks, and building tracts, change in the character or function of any street, reduction in land area set aside for common open space, increase in building height. So a minor change shall include a change in residential floor area, an increase in non-residential floor area of 5% or less, minor variations in layout which do not constitute major changes, and item D is a change in phasing of the development. So it's completely within your authority to make your own interpretation. I do strongly recommend that you make, if you are going to make an interpretation that this is not a minor amendment, that you find a basis in the ordinance to do so. That would be my recommendation.
So we have a report that was provided that in the opinion of the professional planner, that was a minor amendment. Mr. Lockren, you indicated that perhaps we should consider it being a major amendment. Based on what the standards that Mr. Carlisle just read out, do you still believe that it's a major amendment?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically coming from my first look at it, where it was, the path was missing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the question about the minor amendment. I didn't have that language in front of me. I mean, that's pretty black and white. I can't argue on the phasing whatsoever, and I think you've answered the path, so I don't see a path forward for a major amendment, but that's based on what he just read to us.
Is there anyone else who has an issue with considering this as a minor amendment?
It's my opinion, I still think it's a major amendment, because if we go ahead with and I have no qualms about, whether phase 4 could be done before phase 3 or anything,
Mhm.
and I agree with Mr. Epic as far as what he said, it's the way they numbered them, so it wasn't meant to be sequential. I totally agree with that. I just think that we need to understand what's happening with phase 3 before we allow anything to happen in phase 4. Because
Okay.
I think what's happening there is key to the rest of this property. And I think it's the major point that was made to sell this whole project in general.
Mhm.
So, to me, just that alone dictates this is a major change.
Is there anyone else who believes it's a major change? Because we're gonna vote, we're gonna vote on this, so, go ahead.
I don't know whether this enters into whether it's minor or major, but I will say from talking to people that many members of the community were very excited about it being a Nino's. It was discussed widely, and my concern is that these people will think that was, that,
Smoke and mirrors?
yeah, the public had it was told that to make the whole project go down easier, and then it was pulled out from under them potentially.
So I don't think it was conditioned on it being a Nino Salvaggio.
No,
I'm
I
100% in agreement that, I mean, this is what I think all of us want here, but what are we postponing it for, and what are we considering, why are we doing this just because we want a Nino's? I mean, it wasn't guaranteed to us that we would have that. To Brent's point, it's already on a contract. I don't know how you can, get involved with that. I'd be upset if somebody got involved with one of my PAs. So I have concern with that. I fully agree with you, Ron. I wish there was something we can do, and maybe there is something else we can do to achieve what we're talking about. But I don't see that. I don't think we have the purview to make that determination.
I think we do. Like I say, I think they could come to us with what they're gonna do with the phase 3. Just like they detailed everything about the condos they're going to phase 4. Why can't they do that with phase 3? Show us what they're doing with phase 3 and make sure it's something that it's agreeable. I think we did agree that it was gonna be an open air market, not a regular grocery store. That was talked about 100% of the time on everything we did. Whether it's a Nino's or Papa Joe's or, whatever, it's that style of market that everybody talked about, and that's what was, accepted as the concept to go in this facility, so.
Have a quick comment.
Go ahead.
I guess one of the conditions of the ordinance is if it changes the character, and I guess it's kind of hard to argue if something was already preliminarily approved, it's not changing the character of that phase. But kind of to Mr. Kittle's point and Ron's point, if that phase goes first, it has the potential to totally change the character if the market doesn't go in that everybody was promised, if that phase doesn't get developed like everybody was promised. So, I don't know if that's a stretch to say it potentially changes the character of it if you change the phasing. And just to comment to the other board members' question about the, obviously the contracts of the owner of the land are his business and his business alone. But the comment about he has a signed PA, obviously every PA has conditions, and that one could fall through, and the next one could fall through, and the next one could fall through. So a PA with conditions and nothing in writing to the township is, not really worth the paper it's written on, I guess, in my opinion. So that's all.
When Mr. Kittle was supervisor, he did an outstanding job of keeping me in the loop. We had regular communication. He was excellent to work with. And it was generally understood, the chit chat, between, all the behind the scenes that at some point Nino Savagos was in play. But there's nowhere in any of these documents that says Nino Savagos. And I want a quality market as much as Mr. Kittle, as much as everyone in the audience. I have to believe that the developer negotiated in good faith, that he's gonna try his best to get a quality market in there, whether it's a Nino Savagos or a Plum Market or whatever is out there. It's gonna be a quality market with a patio area and other outdoor space. But I strongly believe that there's a PA, there's probably a time limit on that PA. Strongly believe that there's a PA, there's probably a time limit on that PA. It's probably, gonna expire within 90 to 120 days. And we don't play a role in the market. We're not involved in negotiation. We're not involved in leverage between a buyer and a seller. That's not our role. I want no part of that, and I don't believe we should play a part of that. That's my opinion. We are a recommending body. Even if we recommended to do that, which I strongly believe we should not, but even if we did, it's only a recommendation. The township board could ignore it anyway. So it's not a realm that I'm comfortable going into. For this application or any application moving forward, I believe it is wrong to do it, and I'm not gonna have no part of it. Mr. Ritchie is on the township board. Mr. Ritchie will have an opportunity to actually vote up or down on this application. So he's got a very strong voice in this project. The two gentlemen who spoke with their thoughts on this can certainly go to the township board and speak and make the same pitch to the township board, who has a thumb up or thumb down, but it's not our role here. I strongly emphasize it's not our role here. With that being said, I want to move this on. We have a planning commissioner who feels that this should be a major amendment. We're going to vote on that, whether it's a major amendment or a minor amendment. So, we're going to do a roll call vote.
We need to make a motion first.
I know, I'm just getting it ready for a roll call vote. And it's going to be a vote of yes or no, whether this proposed phasing change is a minor amendment. So if you believe it is a major amendment, you're gonna vote no. And if you believe it is a minor amendment, you're gonna vote yes. Okay? So could we have a roll call vote? If it's, so again,
You still need a motion.
I'm gonna make a motion that we consider, that we make a determination that this is either a minor amendment or a major amendment to the PUD.
Need a second.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Savant, second by Lockwood. So,
The motion's not clear. You
It's
say,
a,
Yeah,
it's an
right.
up or down.
you need to say, you need to make a motion that this is either a minor.
I was trying to keep it more informal as consensus, but okay, I'm gonna rephrase my motion. I move that the proposed change from, phasing change is a minor amendment.
Support.
And Mr. Lockren supports the change. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay, Mr. Boersma, absent. Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Mr. Lockren?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
No.
Mr. Ritchie?
No.
Mr. Savidan?
Yes.
Ms. Tully? No. So,
So it ties, so the motion fails.
Motion fails. So the planning commission has made a determination, this is a major amendment.
We're done here.
We're done here on this item tonight.
Mr. Salvin, and I apologize, I didn't have a chance to respond to some of the public comments, I don't know if that's appropriate.
I don't know if it is, Mr. Epping, we've already made a determination that's a major amendment, so the next step is going to be, as I understand, would be scheduling a public hearing for this matter. If there's anything you want to add, given the fact that the decision's already been made, Mr. Epping, I'll give you a brief opportunity to make some comments.
Well, I appreciate everyone's comments, particularly yours, Mr. Chairman. Highly unusual from my perspective that
that these business discussions have been just, it's just highly atypical to have that type of discussion in a public forum without an opportunity to respond. We're, of course, under NDA, just as we were very respectful for all, whether the residential or commercial developers, the kind of the sanctity of private business discussions and not in the public forum become very, very important to the deal, as well as to the integrity of the players in the deal. So we are, speaking for Mr. Silverman, we are absolutely eager and will continue to have meetings with the township subcommittees should they decide to do that. We're not comfortable discussing terms of sales or purchase agreements in public before they're finalized. And I just don't think that that's appropriate. Our application tonight was for final site plan for phase 4 for the detached condos. We do believe that that is still an appropriate consideration. We have put the site plan and have received the reviews for the commissioners. We feel we're still entitled to a vote on final site plan. Now, you may determine that it's out of sequence, but that final site plan could still be approved tonight so that it could go forward once it's determined whether it's a major or minor amendment. But we don't see a reason why we can't have approval or consideration for approval on the detached condos as presented, consistent with the preliminary vote.
Thank you, Mr. Epping. Mr. Ottman, next meeting? The next meeting that this is considered, given the fact that there was an attorney that was present that spoke regarding this project, I would like the township attorney to be present, please.
Okay. Mr.
Thank you.
Simon,
Yes.
I think you probably, since the motion failed, and I'm no parliamentarian, believe me, but I think you need to make a motion to make, a motion that it's a major change and vote on that.
I would agree.
Don't you think so?
I would think so, to make it clear, yes.
Yeah.
I make a motion that, well, I'll let you make the motion, Mr. Ritchie.
All right, I'll make a motion that I consider this to be a major PUD change based on possible change in character of the development. And I guess recommend to the board that it is a major change, so. A little wordy, sorry.
So by voting yes, you're affirming that it's a major change.
Correct.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Discussion.
Yep.
Obviously, these are two motions based on the same thing. If, I'm assuming a member can change their vote, yes or no?
It's
It's a totally separate item.
and different
Yes.
thing.
Because the basis for the motion from Mr. Ritchie was different than the basis for the motion, the previous motion.
Okay.
So, you certainly you have the ability to change your vote if you so choose.
Thanks for the
Either way.
clarification.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Boersma, absent. Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Yes, it's a major
Changed his vote.
change.
Yep, that's
Or
what he
change
said.
his vote, okay.
You started already.
Mr. Lochran?
No.
Mr. Pytel?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Sabaden?
No.
Ms. Tully, yes.
Motion passes.
And I have to respectfully disagree with Mr. Epic. I think under those circumstances, you cannot consider the site plan tonight because you'd have to first determine that it's a viable plan moving forward. And if you're unable to approve the change in sequence, then there's no point in considering it tonight.
Agreed.
Now, you can consider it when you vote on the major change, so this will be back on the agenda as a final site plan recommendation to the township board.
Next item. Item G, regular business. G1, PC file number 2022-007. The petitioner is 313 Presents. The parcel is located on the south side of Clarkston Road, west of Pine Knob Road. Parcel 0815476004. Zoning is R1R, rural residential, and the applicant is requesting amended final site plan approval for the already constructed emergency access gate on Clarkston Road. Mr. Altman, could you put this up on the screen?
Yeah.
I tried on 2 occasions to prepare for this meeting, and I wasn't able to get, my document would not load.
Yeah,
It's a huge document, and I prepare for every meeting, and I was literally unable to look at these plans, and for that I apologize, I tried. Huge document.
Yeah.
Mr. Carlisle.
Well, first of all, let me say that we have representatives of our Sheriff's Command unit here in the township, as well as a representative from now Pine Knob again. Hey, happy to hear that, weren't we? Anyway, this, in 2019, the township permitted, at the time, it's 313 Presents is the parent corporation to construct an emergency gate on Clarkston Road. And this really was initiated, from my understanding, I wasn't part of the conversations, but initiated from a request from the fire department to be able to provide alternative access into the site in case of an emergent situation. That there has always been an access there, and I believe it has been gated, but it was essentially unimproved. So when DTE, Music Theater, approached the road commission with an application, the road commission applied their standards to the application and would not permit an approved gravel, essentially gravel driveway into the site, and required a full-scale paved entrance with, I think, even decel lanes, or at least tapers to be constructed. So I think, frankly, from what happened is what was going to be like a $25,000 project turned into like a $125,000 project. But Pine Knob did proceed and did install that. During the construction of North Sashabaw, the gate, the Sheriff's Department requested that under certain circumstances that gate be used, but particularly because of the construction, there was a necessity to use it. And I don't know the frequency of how often it was used during that period, but it was being used. Once the construction was complete, the Sheriff's Department at that point in time continued to use it on a periodic basis under their supervision and control. Last year, however, it became apparent that the permanent use of that gate was not, had never really been approved by the Planning Commission. This matter did go before the Township Board to develop agreement. I think it was September 7th, and I think it was Mr. Ritchie that conditioned the approval of it on the applicant coming before the Planning Commission for a site plan amendment. There wasn't an agreement drafted. I'm not sure, we don't believe it was ever fully executed by the Township Supervisor, but the agreement does direct the Township Supervisor to approve an agreement regarding the use of that gate. Now, I think commissioners are aware that this particular piece of property has been used for parking for as long as I can remember. It was a leased piece of property, but in recent years, DTE, Pine Knob, purchased the property, so it's now under their ownership, and that was probably another reason why they were willing to make improvements to that drive. So the location, the details, I'm hopefully you can see those, but it is built, and the location and details were submitted as part of the application. And I have had, and Brian have had extensive conversations with the sheriff's department over this particular gate for the last year, and even, well prior to it coming before the board in September. Their desire is to use it on a limited basis when the venue is, has a large concert of generally over 10,000 patrons, or when there is an emergent situation on the grounds which prevent access or limit access through one of the other locations. And at that time, Lieutenant Hill pointed out circumstances where that has actually happened at Pine Knob. The gate would only be used under their supervision and only when they have sufficient staffing to be able to allow its use, and only for egress purposes, because obviously Pine Knob wants to control the traffic coming in also into the site. So those were essentially what the conditions were. That puts it completely within the township's authority to allow the sheriff's department as their agent to determine when or when not the gate should be used. Lieutenant Cummins is here tonight if there's any specific questions about that. So I guess from our perspective, we have relied upon the advice that we received from the fire department and from the sheriff's department regarding the necessity for this, and that's the basis for our recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Go ahead.
I was trying to figure out if there's any change in the process.
What do you mean?
Well, is it currently, it depends on the sheriff's department to request it and approve the conditions?
Well, currently, it's not approved at all. It was approved for, it was being used prior to September 7th by the sheriff's department because they thought that they had authority to use it because it had been granted during the construction, and it apparently it continued on after the construction was done. From the standpoint of its actual how they were going to operate, I don't think they plan on using it any differently than they did before. And it's only under those conditions that I cite. And one of the things is their staffing. They have to have two sheriffs at that gate to allow it to be safely operated. And so it will only be used when that's the case, and when there, again, it's really three conditions. If there's an emergency within the parking area that prevents them from accessing the site, or requires them to route traffic to leave the site so that they can attend to an accident, and there's accidents that occur out there in the parking lot all the time. When there's a large venue and they need to get traffic cleared out, more rapidly, and that's generally over 10,000, or if there's some other type of emergency where they need to use that gate to get in and out of to attend to an emergency during a concert.
So generally, there's no change in the process, this just kind of codifies it?
No, well, the change obviously is that the use of this gate was never, it was never
formally accepted. It wasn't proposed or accepted, so.
Right.
It was just kind of, let's do this, and somebody did it, and it really was done on an emergency basis, not a.
Yeah, and probably in all likelihood in the past, there probably were circumstances where, and we don't know, might well have been being used for certain circumstances.
I'm sure people drove across there and drove off.
It was
when they
being
wanted to
used,
shoot
it
that,
was
so.
being used actually illegally or
Right.
in an unsafe, informal manner by patrons who would drive around the old gate
Oh.
when it was a gravel thing, and it was, that was creating a problem. So they've secured that situation, so that, with the new situation, the new drive, that won't happen. But, this improvement was when they made this improvement, I don't believe anybody from the township told them that they needed to go through a revised site plan until it came before the board, and that was the decision that the board made. I think that's pretty much the situation, right, Ron?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I said, last year, I objected because it came straight to the board.
Yeah.
And I said that, this is a change in the use of this PUD, and it needs to come before the planning commission. So last year, I made a motion to approve the emergency use for the 2021 season, and that before the 22 season, they had to come and make their proposal and get approval
I see.
from the planning commission. So, I mean, I probably drove why it's here.
It's all good. Mr. Longers, did you review this?
We did not.
Okay. Lieutenant Cummins, do you have anything to add to this? You're certainly welcome to come up. If not, if Mr. Carlisle did an outstanding job, you don't have to, but I want to give you an opportunity.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
What about the Pine Knob
Yeah,
people?
anyone
Represent-
else
somebody- to
anyone
me,
else from your
somebody needs
team
to
want to come up
say-
and talk? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Commission. My name is Elmer Straub. I work with 313 Presents. Do I have to give my address?
Yes.
627 Windstone Circle, Oakland, Michigan.
Thank you.
The one thing I would add too is the capacity. So the paved capacity is around 50, the total capacity is around 5,600. So out of that capacity, the grass is around 25. So you are talking about, close to half of the capacity of parking, and that provides a great artery out, and we would not operate it without Sergeant Yan and Lieutenant Cummins. So we wouldn't operate that, we wouldn't staff it, we rely totally on the partnership with Oakland County. So I just want to let everyone know that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
What's the seating capacity?
That's not are you talking about parking or seating?
Right.
Vehicle capacity. Yeah, so 15,000 is
15,000.
the
Yeah.
capacity of the room, and then it's 5,600
Thank you.
cars.
Go ahead.
I just want some clarification, because I guess maybe I missed it, but it says emergency access. Is this really secondary access for certain occasions? Is that a better term for it?
You can call it whatever, yeah, it is.
I don't
It's
know if
both,
that changes
actually.
my opinion of it. I want to make sure that
I think it's
sounds
fa-
like it's going to be open for big concerts. I mean, is that?
Not for
ingress.
Yeah, not for ingress, only for egress, and only when the sheriff's department determines it's necessary and they have the staffing to be able to accommodate it.
I mean, personally, I think it's probably good to have that secondary access. I'm calling it. I just, it hasn't necessarily been vetted with the neighbors and all of that. So I mean, again, I'm not raising a concern. I just want to know what the frequency is, and if it's just every big concert now has a secondary access, I maybe should have called it secondary access.
Yeah.
Secondary egress.
Secondary
Yeah.
egress, I'm sorry, yes.
Well, let me just say this, I don't believe it was either the Pine Knobs nor either the fire or the sheriff's department intent to allow that to be used in every circumstance. In fact, that would be the first that I would have ever heard of that only under the conditions that were outlined in my review are when they want to use it, because for smaller concerts, it's just not necessary, unless there's a problem. So, but, we can call it whatever you feel comfortable with,
Mhm.
but that's really, that's what the intent is.
The intent of the ingress was only for emergency, so
Correct.
police, fire, to get in there if they had to. That's the only people who will
Not-
be
Not for patrons.
Yeah, going into the gate, not out.
Correct.
If we've got first responders, police, fire, and paramedics telling us we need this, I think we need this. So I have no issue with this.
Yeah, it's very sensible and it improves safety when required.
Would one of the examples been Bob Seeger in 2019 when there was an accident on Sashabaw and we sat there for like 3 hours?
Yeah, and that was one of the examples that Lieutenant Hill cited to us when we met about this last year. So,
Just couldn't get out.
stuff happens, they have fender benders and,
It happens in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I guess that's my comment. I've been waiting to make comment, but I was gonna let everybody speak first, but, so I didn't sway. I'm not trying to sway everybody every time I talk.
I didn't
but,
speak yet, if you wanna go last.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Mr. Galley, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, as a lifelong area resident, when it's a sold-out show, that is a nightmare to get out of there. So I totally agree with it as a egress point, only for patrons on a big show. And obviously ingress, emergency vehicles needed, obviously. The one question I have is obviously it's gravel. Sometimes that place gets muddy when it's rainy. Is there any type of bond necessary for road, mud, or soil erosion bonding or anything like that?
The entrance is not, that's not gravel.
But cars are leaving there at
When you
2
say they're
miles an
driving
hour
across
once they
the
hit the
grass
road, the
and
mud.
stuff, are they dragging stuff out onto the road?
And I guess on the comment about vetting with the neighbors, I think neighbors would probably, in my opinion, neighbors would be in favor of it because anything that clears the traffic quicker. And, you know, everybody who lives in this area knows, hey, on big shows, avoid this whole area. So anything to do with speed of egress, I think, is totally in favor by all the neighbors, I would guess, 100%. Oh, yes, exactly. And that's one of the hardest places to get out of at the venue, obviously, when you're up there.
If we're gonna have a dialogue, please come to the podium.
I just wanted to corroborate what Mr. Galley said. When we have social media, we have comments on the website. If you can't get out of the lot, it's bad luck for us as a company and for the community. So part of what we work with the Oakland County Sheriff on is getting people out in a smooth manner. So, you know, our parking folks aren't the ones that are directing traffic. We rely on the professionals. So just to corroborate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ritchie, final word before
All right,
before
I
a
just
vote.
my comments, like I said, to me, one of the major reasons why I wanted to bring this back is one, like you said, Mr. Savadon, that I'm in favor of whatever is safe, you know, increases safety and, you know, least accidents and least burden on the township, you know, when concerts are occurring, I'm in favor of that. I guess what I'm not in favor of is allowing Pine Knob or 313, whatever, you know, whatever the entity is, you know, this entity here is continuing to make improvements that help their, and I'm trying to separate the safety aspect from the commercial aspect, that by allowing this access, we're allowing them to improve the experience of the customer. You know, obviously, if they can get out safer and quicker out of the venue, it's a better customer experience for those people. And that's pretty much what you guys have verbalized. Say, hey, the sooner we get out here, it makes it the better, right? And I guess what I'm getting at is this venue's been a great venue for the township, and you know, brought a lot of great activity here. But what I guess what needs to be recognized is that by allowing this exit, it's another artery in and out of this facility. And there's not been any ownership previously of what they're doing, you know, to the township and to the community. Like they're using Pine Knob Road for entrance and exit of vehicles coming in and out, and that road, you know, needs maintenance and caretaking to keep it in shape for the residents that do live there, and people that are leaving there, you know, tearing up the road, you know, because they've had a couple drinks and they decide to drive a little faster or whatever. You know, that's wear and tear in the road that's extraordinary on top of normal pedestrian traffic. And now we're going to allow this exit onto Clarkson Road. But there is burden on the township as well. It's obviously the police are going to be there to supervise the cars going in and out. But like Mr. Galley's saying, who's going to be responsible for like the mud and stuff that's being dragged out on the road and filling into our storm sewer system and all that. So this is where every, you know, like the use of Pine Knob Road or the use of this exit out on Clarkson Road, there needs to be some ownership by this organization to help the township do that. The burden should be on the township to go and re-gravel the road and make sure Pine Knob Road just stays a decent road for the residents. It shouldn't be up just to the township for, to clean out our storm sewers, because of the dirt and everything that's being drug out there. There needs to be some ownership, by this venue to say, to increase the event, the pleasure of going to this event, because if nothing else, why wouldn't we just have the one entrance on, everybody go in and out on Sashaball? It's like, because that's all paved, the road's all made to handle that traffic. The other roads aren't, they're taking the beating on that. And I guess, to me, by approving this as well, one of the steps would have been normally a public hearing, so the residents around there could come and say yea or nay to the addition of this. Because it is a change. Headlights are gonna be pointing right into the guy's house across the street as they're going in and out. So I guess my heartache on the whole thing is that there needs to be some ownership. They need to either commit to, keeping Pine Knob Road improved, or maybe like Brian said, some bonding to assure the township. I guess what I'm getting at, the township's taking the burden of improving their customer experience. And I don't think that that should be taken lightly, because it's the taxpayers' money that has to go to keep up the all those different features that make the good customer experience for Pine Knob. So, if that makes sense to anybody, so I don't think I'm all in favor. I'm not here to arm wrestle with the sheriff's department whether it's needed or not needed or anything. I think anything that, like I say, improves safety. I think if we approve this, it should definitely only be used for emergency use. That it's called by the sheriffs would have to be there to utilize that, and go from there. So.
But you do have you are satisfied with the agreement that the board came up with, Ron?
What was the agreement?
Pardon me?
What was the agreement that the board came up with? Like I say, every time you try to scroll on this thing, everything jams up too. So.
Yeah, I can't get it.
Well, on September 7th, the board passed, an agreement that had been drafted by Mr. Kelly to establish the terms of the use of this.
That was, to me, that was agreed to for the 2021 season. There is no, are you saying that tonight we're agreeing to all these same things? If we,
You're not,
right.
This is not your thing. This is a board matter.
Right, but, I guess what I'm getting at, that's why we only approved it for the 2021 season. To me, that, tonight starts another agreement, so.
No, that's not a planning commission matter.
Was it a maintenance agreement? What is it?
Well, that's, I'm saying that there needs to be some ownership in that, and that needs to be part of any agreement that we do for that, so.
When they can use it.
Well, you're.
It's
you're
really
able
the board
to add a
that came up
condition
with
to your approval of this, that they may, that they, provide, maintenance of Clarkston Road. You'll have to word it to be very specific, because it doesn't happen all that often, but it may. But that would be within the purview of the planning commission. The operational agreement is a board agreement.
But how does revenue from Pine Knob come to the township?
Well,
I mean,
guess,
is it based on the
yeah,
number of people?
I'm not the assessor or anything, but I'm sure there is a property tax fee for that property and everything
It's
as
a
well.
property
So,
tax.
yeah.
Property taxes and people coming and going,
Right.
going to other businesses, to and fro, on their way in and way out.
So, there, I guess in my mind, I've always talked about businesses. To me, a business is a resident of the township too. So, they have rights and responsibilities just like anybody else. I guess I'm just saying that, to me, I think part of any agreement that we have is, I agree that, they should be able to use this exit for emergency uses, to help, on the large event nights. But I think there needs to be some ownership, on any of the entrances or exits that's coming out of there. There has to be ownership on the burden that puts on the township. It'd be like you driving out your driveway and driving over your neighbor's your yard, your neighbor's gonna say, hey, you need to fix my yard, so.
Yeah, I'm just thinking more customers, more happy customers mean more customers, mean more revenue into the township somehow. Stopping at restaurants before
Right.
and all that.
Does 313 own the grass lot? Or is it
Yes.
okay, so I mean, they're also paying taxes on the vacant property there, and they have road frontage, so they're paying non-homestead big tax bill on all the vacant property, I just wonder how you word a maintenance agreement. I mean, at our level, it's kinda,
Well, I think what Mr. Ritchie is really talking about is really issues for the board to address. Which would be,
Well, it's gonna go back to the board to be approved after, basically, are we just
I don't
recommending,
know.
use of the,
I don't-
gate as emergency?
I have no idea. I don't,
Our role in this application, what's before us this evening is approving the use of,
it's amended.
The amended site
Yeah,
plan.
amended site plan, correct.
but I agree with what Mr. Ritchie said, and I'm thinking about it, and again, I wasn't able to, this was such a massive document, my computer kept crapping out, so, on the one hand, this is potentially, so, when I go to concerts, let the record show, Oakland County Police Department, when I leave concerts, I'm typically in the passenger seat or the back seat. I always have a DD that drives, so I don't experience driving out of here personally. I witness it. I don't. So
You don't know if you're doing a donut coming out? of
yeah,
there?
I'm not driving because I'm smart. So, but on the one hand, this is relieving some of the traffic that would have gone on the gravel road to exit. But on the other hand, it's improving the experience, so potentially more people are attending concerts because their experience is more positive than it was the last time. So that could potentially increase traffic on the gravel road. So I hear everything you're saying, and I think it's important for this company to be a good partner with the township. The matter before us is this site plan. Is there a way for us to communicate as a board by resolution that this is a matter that the board should consider? And, the partnership and the maintenance,
Right.
sharing of the maintenance and that type of thing.
Like I say, the only idea I could come up with is on something that could happen on a regular basis would be the county grades and gravels Pine Knob Road now. I mean, there's gotta be a cost per linear foot or something on that. To me, that, they need to pay, the share, say from, and I'm going to say from Clarkson Road back to where the little Y road comes out, the exit. Obviously, you can go all the way to Walden Road, but I guess to me, if they just took ownership of the road from that entrance exit on Pine Knob Road to Clarkson Road, whatever the cost of the county to gravel and grade that on an annual basis, to me, that should be like a stipend that they pay, to the township.
Yeah, I mean, if there's only a half a dozen houses on that road, maybe I might be off by a couple, but I'm not off by many.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. To me, the concert traffic is 90% of
Yeah.
the total yearly traffic, I would think, or more, so.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that it sounds weird that I'm talking about Pine Knob Road when we're talking about the exit onto Clarkson Road. But I mean, you could word it the same way. It's like, how do we know, our storm sewers are not being
Yeah.
burdened, or, whatever I can't even think of all the ideas that might be happening. So I'm just trying to come up with one thing that we can monetize
Yeah.
to make it fair.
There is a relationship, and like you indicated, this is gonna impact the house across the street. I mean,
Well, so I say, if we had a
without
public
question.
hearing like we normally would do, then those people might come in and we'd have a different perspective. I don't know.
Mhm.
We're
So
discounting that.
they would have been noticed for
Why would
this,
we have a public hearing
correct?
on an amended site plan? Where in the ordinance does it say we have a public hearing
Well-
on the site plan?
Well, even if I don't think it was published that we're amending the site plan, was it?
Yeah.
All right. So if no public came, then I guess we don't have to consider that, so. I guess in my mind, what we're doing is improving their customer relationship, so.
To me, it almost felt like it was more like a temporary use permit or I don't wanna say special land use permit, but it's for specific times and it has some specific
Mr. Walker,
conditions.
And that's exactly why we took it to the board to begin with, because the board has always dealt with the traffic issues associated with Pine Knob. That is the exact reason why we took it to the board. As long as I've been with this community, it has been the board that has always dealt with the operational issues, because the board, the sheriff's department works for the board, under contract with the board. And that is why this was taken to the township board to begin with. I have no problem with doing the amendment of the site plan, but I do think that the operational issues that have always been in the purview of the board should continue with the board. Because they're being asked to commit township resources to Pine Knob. That's not something that's in the planning commission's authority.
I think Mr. Carlisle, I'd welcome your input or Mr. Rotman's input on this, but I think maybe the appropriate step would be, if we believe that this is the right, from a safety and operational standpoint, if this is the right move, then perhaps we approve this conditional on the applicant negotiating an agreement for 2022, similar to the one they did for 2021.
Or in perpetuity.
In perpetuity or annually or something like that.
Right, I
So
mean, it
that
doesn't
there's
have
a-
to be a one-year agreement.
So we're not the ones who have our fingerprints all over the operations and the money, but we've communicated to the township, and we've actually, conditioned the approval of this project on that happening.
I guess that was my,
Mr. Carlisle, any thought?
You can
Okay.
do whatever you want.
Okay.
I mean, the issue of the operation, just my opinion, is a
Yep.
board matter.
Yep.
Because they have to be responsible, the sheriff's department is responsible to the board is responsible for the sheriff's services.
Yep. So we deal,
And fire services too, for that matter.
so we deal with the matter at hand and push the fiscal and operational responsibilities on the township board as a condition of approval. Does that work?
Yep, that's fine. Guess I'll try a motion.
Okay.
If there's no more comment. PC file number 2022-007, petitioner 313 presents, requesting amended final site plan for the approval of the constructed emergency access gate on Clarkston Road. I motion that we approve the request for the access gate with the comment that is mostly used in large shows determined by the sheriff's department's need for egress only for the patrons, obviously ingress for any emergency vehicles needing to get into the area, and also that the board take a look at extending the previously signed agreement and explore some shared maintenance opportunities on Pine Knob Road.
I support.
We have a motion, we have a support. Any discussion? We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Boersma, absent. Mr. Galley,
Yes.
Mr. Lockren,
Yes.
Mr. Keitel,
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Chairman Sabadan.
Yes.
Ms. Tully, yes. Passed unanimous.
Passed unanimously with the motion that your next step is the township board. Thank you. Next item is item H, approval of minutes.
Okay.
3 sets of minutes. Do we want to take these one at a time or all together?
I don't know what the rule would be.
Well, let's do them one at a time.
Okay. All right, I move for approval of the regular meeting minutes of the planning commission of April 14th, 2022.
That's item H1. I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no one. Abstentions? Hearing no one. That's a 6-0.
I move for approval of the special joint workshop between the board and the planning commission minutes of April 21st, 2022.
I second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving these minutes as provided, as submitted, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one? Abstentions? No one? That's a 6-0 approval.
I move for approval of the meeting minutes of the special meeting of the Planning Commission of April 28th, 2022.
I'll support.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone who, any nays? And I abstain from that. I was not present.
Oh, true.
It still was approved. I could have approved, but I wasn't there, so. So all three sets of minutes were approved. Item I, consultants reports. Mr. Carlisle.
Got nothing. They'll be kind to you tonight.
Any update on the master plan, next steps?
Well, we are recording the results of the workshop. The community profile is very close to being completed. And we'll be putting a schedule together for, the additional public input very shortly.
Very effective special study meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought you all did a great job.
And I saw the article in the paper on the technology.
Yep.
Yeah.
code.
Looks great. Nice job.
But Brian, just curious, how many responses have you got in the survey so far?
Only about 9 responses, but I've been tracking the hits on the website, and it's a couple hundred.
Great.
Wow.
Great.
So.
Such as the newspaper, here, maybe I'll get more.
Oh yeah, I went way up today.
That's awesome. Item J, discussion. I've got something. I had I was able to attend the the APA, American Planning Association Annual Conference that was in San Diego. If you've never been to San Diego, it does not suck. It's a great place. One of the highlights was I got to attend the recognition ceremony of Mr. Carlisle being recognized as a fellow with AICP. So basically, it's he's been entered into the National Planning Hall of Fame is the best way to describe it. So well deserved, and it was a great time.
He's
So.
enshrined.
And just a really quick story. When I first started working in Michigan, I worked for a consultant for 7 years, and my mentor there was a guy named Doug Piggott, and he was recognized as well. So I got to attend the ceremony for 2 guys I really respect a lot. So it was great. So any other discussion or ideas or anything to add?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was very nice, and very much appreciated Brent, and Mark Miller, who's the city manager of Troy, also attended. So it was nice. I'm glad that I did it.
It was really kind of strange because for once I was actually running early, and I got there and I go to the door and I can't get in. It's like, what's going on? So I go to the other door and I pull it, and the door opens, and there's an EMS team. Someone's had a medical condition. I'm like, no, Dick, no. But yeah, one of the honorees had a problem that paramedics had to come and treat him and get him out of there on a stretcher. So hopefully he or she was okay. But that was a little weird. So it was a little bit delayed, but well deserved, Dick.
Thank you.
Next item is item K, adjournment. And I'm going to make a motion that is that 8:30?
Yeah.
8:30.
I make a motion that we adjourn at 8:30 p.m. Do I have a second? Second. Second. Mr. Pytel, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.